And we begin with breaking news on the impending trade war between Canada and the U.S., which could begin as soon as midnight Eastern time with tit-for-tat tariffs. As we take a live look at Washington, we are hearing from U.S. President Donald Trump that he has spoken with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau this morning about the issue, and they plan to talk again later on today, 3 p.m. Eastern. Now, according to the Prime Minister, these are the first calls between the two leaders since Trump took office. And as we await more information on these high-stakes communications, we'll bring you comprehensive coverage on how this is all unfolding. We'll also try to answer your questions about what it could mean for you.
We may have short-term a little pain, and people understand that, but long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world.
That's Donald Trump taking questions from reporters last night on his way back to the White House. He's repeating a string of complaints to justify his punishing tariffs, pointing to legal migrants and fentanyl crossing the Canadian border, trade deficits with Canada, as well as what he claims are Canadian barriers that keep out U.S. goods and services. So for more on our coverage today, we want to bring in the CBC's Janice McGregor. She's live with us from Ottawa. Hey, Janice. So the trade war technically starts tomorrow, but shots have officially been fired politically on both sides. Where do things stand right now?
Yeah, so monitoring things on a few fronts here. First, in terms of the brinkmanship, the last-minute diplomacy, for example, we are hearing from the Prime Minister's office that, yes, this call between Justin Trudeau and Donald Trump happened, that they will speak again this afternoon. We're told that what they discussed on the first call was trade and the border. So not very many details. I'm not sure that we would anticipate them saying too much by way of negotiation in public, but for those still hoping there might be some way back from this brink, it is better to be talking than not to be talking. And I guess we continue to monitor this situation as the day rolls along. Otherwise, this is very much a day to take stock of how the first volleys in each direction have landed, and also to keep an eye on the other front in this war, which will be at this hour kind of opening up on the southern border as Mexico's president steps forward with her list of retaliation against the Americans, how that changes the calculus in terms of pressure politically on the U.S., adding to different economic levers that people are trying to use to spark attention among key American voices. We know Trade Minister Mary Ng was speaking with her Mexican counterpart late yesterday, presumably wanting to share as much intelligence as they can and understand what each is doing, even if they aren't necessarily working together on this per se. Of course, nothing short of the future of NAFTA may be what ultimately is on the table here. But just to stick for now to the initial list of $30 billion worth of American imports that the Canadian government released yesterday, I found it was very interesting when they were briefing reporters that Canadian government officials said they couldn't share any kind of a projected impact of what these early waves of retaliation might mean for the economy. Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc did meet with the Bank of Canada and the top kind of financial institutions in this country yesterday. We know from what some of the banks, for example, have had their economists posting publicly over the weekend that there is a huge hit in store and that this is going to hurt. And that this is going to make the fight against inflation harder, something that we were only now kind of getting under control in this country. This early list, though, maybe not so much about economic impact, but political attention grabbing. It includes a lot of products that will result in big American brands that come from very politically sensitive swing states with noisy senators and representatives in them. For example, economist Trevor Tombe ran some napkin math and found that Ohio, the home state of Vice President J.D. Vance, has more than any other in terms of actual dollar value been targeted for its exports to Canada. But I want to just have a note of caution here because I ran kind of one of the totals that came out at the briefing by an industry that was sort of crunching its own numbers, seeing if they could match the government's math, and they're not sure that this list really adds up to the totals that the government says it does. So we watch that, but we also don't know how much revenue is going to come in from these tariffs for a couple of reasons. First, companies can apply to the Canadian government to be exempt from having to pay them. We'll watch to see what the uptake is on that. And also, they don't know how consumers are going to change their behavior. Will a Buy Canadian movement really kind of take hold across the land? If they don't know how many billions they might make in tariff revenue in Ottawa, that will make it difficult to budget for the assistance package that they say is coming for affected workers and specific sectors that are at risk of shedding jobs and being seriously damaged by this trade war. Yesterday, Pierre Poilievre said that Conservatives are going to be keeping a close eye on this angle.
Tariffs must not be a tax grab. None of the money from the tariffs should stay in government coffers or be spent on unrelated government priorities. All of it should go back to the workers and businesses that are affected, and most of it should go back in the form of a massive tax cut.
And now, Janice, that was Pierre Poilievre speaking yesterday, but he actually has a new video out this morning unveiling a proposal of his own to improve Canada's economic competitiveness in the face of course, these new tariffs. So what did we hear from him today?
Yeah, one of these packaged kind of video rants launched on his social media channels. The topic of this one is what a Conservative government would do about, frankly, a perennial issue, the problem of interprovincial trade barriers, basically making it harder for Canadians to do business with each other. The things that they are proposing to do, should they win the next election, are things like standardizing trucking regulations from coast to coast. Poilievre is proposing what he called a blue seal, professional licensing standard, to make it easier for people to take a job in another province. I will say, Nita Anand, the current minister in charge of this file, did convene Provincial Voices last Friday. They are working on these fronts in some cases already. Some of these things are controversial, not popular with provinces, but Poilievre in his video says a Conservative government would reward provinces that agree to remove barriers that could boost Canada's GDP growth with a equivalent tax transfer that a province could then use to improve things like schools and hospitals. What he didn't say, though, with this plan and a fairness issue that might emerge should it be enacted at some point, is that if you look at the Western Canadian provinces, they've already proactively actually lowered a lot of barriers. They have a partnership, for example, between them. They've been a lot more active on this file than some of the more protectionist jurisdictions in Eastern Canada. This proposal would actually be flowing more money, rewarding the more protectionist jurisdictions in the eastern half of the country. They could stand to gain more than the ones in the West who have been maybe better Boy Scouts to this point. So that is one question that may arise as this goes along. We are also watching for any fallout from what we understood was a very interesting meeting between the opposition leaders and Justin Trudeau late yesterday, one we only know about because Elizabeth May talked about it on her social media channels, one where they all agreed that the problem here is not fentanyl, it's about Canadian sovereignty, and Canada must not back down.